Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. So, hope everyone's doing good. So, anybody who has been paying attention or been following my page, I've been knee deep in covering all things Friday 13th, and I don't really do anything different as far as movie habits go around Halloween, the Halloween season. Halloween is coming up really quick. I watch horror movies all year round, so I it's not anything different. It's not anything new for me. So even though it's my favorite holiday, and with that, I've been covering all of those movies again, and it's been a blast. I just finished the last one in the series, so tonight will be a at first because I watched all of the movies in succession that belong to the entire Friday 13th. So I am now done with the whole series. So now the question is what I will watch next. So anyway, but that all being said, I like to do different shows here on the channel. I like to bring some variety to things. I do things on music. I've done shows on composers. I've done shows on directors that I really love. I've done shows where I talk about industry happenings, trends, Blu-rays, streaming, physical media issues, directors, music things, bands that I really love. To me, it's all obviously very, very interconnected, and it's all the same thing. So, so today's show, and again, I've always said many, many times that movies are the biggest influence for me when it comes to my band Quantum. And today's show is going to be about my band Quantum and also about our big show coming up on November 8th at Hey Sailor at 6:30. We are going to be having a album release party. We have a new album that's actually been recorded for a while, and the new album's entitled "In Dreams I Saw Chapter 2." So this show is going to be kind of about that show coming up, the Quantum show. I'm going to talk a little bit about the album, and where it came from, some of the things behind the scenes that made that album possible, and also talk about the show itself, where I have some special guests that are going to be there, some good friends that are going to also be performing. My friends Ronnie, aka Enor, and my friend Eric Halsey, aka Halsey, or Eric Halsey, but everybody calls him Halsey, and he goes by the name of Halsey. So, yeah, so today's show is going to be just about kind of that, the upcoming show, the album release party. So it's hard to believe, but my band Quantum has been around for about 10 years, which is crazy to me. I started the band about 10 years ago, and we've put out a handful of albums every few years or so. Our first Quantum album was a self-titled album, and that album was very different because it was a kind of an open-ended experimentation. That album, we and Quantum basically, it consists of me and my really great friend, one of my best friends, Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in the band, and he also has the recording studio where we record all of these records. And when we first started the band, I was initially doing it. Well, I did start it myself, and I was doing it initially solo. I think I played maybe one or two things where I played solo. But we had this idea, Mike and I, and Mike had come to me with it about presenting something different in the context of what I was doing, having live bass and having this like live kind of, interaction going on. So fast forward a few months after, or 6 or 7 months after the band was formed, we started playing together. So we put out our first album, which was a self-titled album, And that album was really different because I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't quite know how to achieve it. I was very very new to the craft of writing music. So I had at that point I had, a pretty decent amount of experience recording, and I really started to love recording. But the years before that period, I always found recording really tough and kind of overwhelming. I never really got into it, but after I started working on my own material, I fell in love with it. And to this day, it's one of my favorite things to do. I absolutely love recording. So when we approached the first Quantum album, we basically piecemealed it together. We went into the studio and just kind of experimented. I might have come in with a couple of ideas, like maybe a melody or a drum groove or what have you, and we basically went into the studio and just kind of recorded a bunch of different things, whether they were longer segments or smaller segments, and we would just collect all of these different sounds. And then we did this for quite a while, and then after we felt it was exhausted, then we started this process of trying to like make sense of all of this craziness. So then we started assembling what we had into tracks, into songs. And that's what that first album kind of became. And after that, the band became more active, and we got a chance to play quite a few shows, and the band kind of became more of a regular thing. And we kind of developed, and I started writing some do's here and there, like at a very slow kind of snail pace. I started writing some songs and had some kind of concepts and ideas. So fast forward a few years after that, we recorded our second album, which is called Digital Palace. And that album was a little bit of the same process, but more formulated, where there were definitely tunes that in the process of those few years, it was about 2 years later or so, I started writing music. And so those things were recorded, but then we also still stuck to the original plan of how we did the first album, where we did everything in the studio. We wrote the tracks, we edited all of these different things together and put them all together. And the thing that was a little bit of a tough thing was that a lot of the music, well, basically all of the music on the first Quantum album, because of the way it was done, we couldn't really play any of it live because it was all different pieces and radically different shifts of instrumentation and all of these things. So we couldn't really perform them live. It became more of a purely a studio project. So the second album, Digital Palace, became a little bit of both. Like suddenly we had songs that were, actual tunes that we could perform, but then there was like the other half of the album or so. It was a thing of where we, kind of chopped and glued things together. So there was tunes we couldn't play. But the whole band, the project started to kind of gel. It started to, I felt like it was starting to find its own voice, and it was starting to, get into a certain kind of groove and a certain kind of funk, and it was starting to become a thing. And by that point, thankfully, the band started playing quite a bit, playing different gigs and playing at different venues. So it was this slow trickle. We started playing lots of local shows. And there was quite a few years after, it was probably about 3 or 4 years later, that when our third album came out. So there was a big gap of time. And during that time, I started writing a lot of music. I started writing all of these tunes. And then we were lucky to play. We got to play lots of different shows. We played again. We continued to write lots of. I started to just continually write new music and experiment, and played lots of local gigs. And then we were fortunate with that. And then we actually did some tours. We played in like Montreal and played throughout New England, played in Canada a few times, and played a decent amount of shows in New York City. We started, really stretching out and played in Vermont, and we started to really kind of stretch out and grow, and it was a nice space to be in, and it was, kind of we were in unknown territory, but it felt like the band was accumulating something different and kind of unique, finding our own voice. And all of the influences of music that I loved, jazz, music that I still love, like jazz and funk, hip hop, electronic music, ambient music, experimental music, my love of film, soundtracks, all those things, the aesthetics of films, all of those influence started to, I felt were really, even Latin jazz, all of those things I felt at that point were really kind of filtering into our sound, our development. And the other thing that was so cool about it was that at the end of the day, Quantum is, it's my baby. It's my own little weird little baby that I put out in the world. And so it felt really great. It felt really satisfying. It was, again, a totally new thing for me. I had always been used to kind of being a side man and being a hired person to whether I was supposed to do a recording for someone or to play a live gig for someone, and and all of those things that entails. But this was, and it was always around other people's material or cover tunes. So this was a whole new experience. And so after about 3 or 4 years, we decided to record our third album, which was called The Stars Beneath Our Feet. And I decided to have a totally different approach for that album. I decided to have the material really, really worked out, really, really fleshed out, and record that material. And we were going to kind of get away from the whole thing of, improvising in the studio and piecemealing things together. We were going to try to do it, well, I guess you could say in a traditional way, the way a band usually functions, and have, all the material really ready, worked out, fleshed out, and then we just go into the studio, and hopefully all the work is done, and we can just worry about putting on good performances. And during that gap of time between those albums, it was about 3 or 4 years. It was a long time. We were, we were very fortunate to play lots of shows, and so we basically, I love the live performance more than anything because I feel like whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, as far as how it goes over, I feel like it's the ultimate testing ground for me, at least. That's where I test out material. Like I feel like if I can play a song, play a tune, and it resonates with people, then to me it makes sense. It has something to say. And then on the opposite side of things, if I play a song and it just kind of goes over like a fart in church, then I realize, well, it needs something else. There's some tweaking that needs to be done, or maybe it just could be put in the garbage disposal. So to me, the live performance is the ultimate kind of testing ground, and then it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of challenging, and it's a lot of there's a lot of challenges around that. So, but for about 4 years, we basically tested out this material, played it a lot, and rehearsed it a lot. And so when we decided to record, we were pretty ready, and we went in and we recorded the whole album in the span of a few days, and then we released it. And by that point, things were going pretty well. We had a big release party, and things were really hitting a stride. But the thing that was really unique about that album, the Stars Beneath Our Feet, was that we had a totally different approach to how we were going to record. We didn't. There was no unknowns when we went into the studio. Like all the music was really ready to go, and I felt like you could hear it in the sound. And so I was like, wow, okay, this is, in the future, I think I want to do it this way. I think I want to stick to this kind of to this template of having things really worked out, having things. And the other thing that was really encouraging was everything that we recorded, we could play live. We could pull it all off live. It was all, it was all doable. So that was one other thing that I wanted to do is like challenge myself to be try to be creative, but also at the end of the day, it's something we could play live. It wasn't something that we couldn't do. So that was another concept that really that came into my way of thinking that was very very new, and it presented more challenges. So fast forward about 4 years later, the the plague hit us. COVID came, and there was a lockdown, and the world basically ended on paper. So, which was a an incredibly hard time, to say the least. So, when I kind of got through the worst of it, I got to a space of being able. I started writing music again, and I had these series of events that happened to me during COVID, and especially during the lockdown, that were some of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. And so I started writing all of this music, and after a while, I started seeing reflections of all of that in the music. And so I started to think that this whole thing that I was working on, and I was fortunate enough to write a lot of material. It started to feel like, wow, this is kind of a concept album. All of the music previously that I've done with Quantum, obviously, all of that music is obviously inspired by, mostly film and all things films, and bands that I love, music that I love, art that I love, and, personal things. So I've always been into writers who can kind of keep things somewhat ambiguous. So, like, for example, David Bowie. He's my favorite of all time, and I love that the listener can get a different interpretation. It's not so obvious what the song is about, even though from his perspective, the writer, David Bowie's perspective, the songs are probably about something very specific. But I think you can have individually listening to it, you can have a different perspective or a different experience, as opposed to like a band or an artist that puts out a song saying, "Well, this is a sad song. This is a breakup song. This is a song about the love of my life." That can be good and that can be great, and it's like very specific. The thing, the songwriter is wearing his heart on his sleeve. But I love ambiguity. I love when you don't quite know maybe what it's about, but it can mean something different to you at a different stage in your life, or in a different mental space, or at a later, and it might mean something completely different to the person next to you. I love that ambiguous kind of mysterious quality about David Bowie's lyrics and his music. So that's kind of just naturally how I've always kind of how my brain has always you know worked. So we we I realized, wow, this is weird. This is like kind of becoming a concept album. So fast forward a year or two after not playing any shows for obvious reasons and no real human interaction, things luckily changed, and we started to play a few gigs again, and we had all of this material, and realized by the end of it there was enough material for two albums. So about 2 years ago we recorded. We had I'd been sitting on the material for quite a while, and there was a summertime or two where we were fortunate to play a lot of gigs again, and then so we really worked on that material, and it became this thing of like, wow, this is like a concept album, you know and I was like, huh, this is interesting. And concept albums aren't really a thing anymore. That, obviously the biggest band that's probably known for concept albums is Pink Floyd. And other lots of bands in the 70s and 60s put out concept albums, like double albums, and they were about like some kind of thing, whether it was some kind of literature, fictional literature, or some, personal journey, or what have you. And I've always been a big fan of the concept album, but you don't really see that anymore. So, and plus with people's attention spans, it's another factor. So we ended up recording all of the music that we had been working on for a while, and so it came out to where at the end of the recording session we were like, holy shit, we have enough for two albums. So we recorded both albums, and then I came up with this whole kind of concept, and it was related to all of my experiences around COVID, other things also, but it was definitely centered on that just incredibly surreal experience and all of the experiences I had. So I was under the mindset of like, wow, this is going to be a concept album. So at first we were going to release the album as a double album, and I came up with the title "In Dreams I Saw," and then I decided to not release all of the albums together and split them up. So we decided to separate them in chapters. So 2 years ago, we released the first of these two albums, In Dreams I Saw, Chapter 1. We had that album come out, and it was a really great time. Played a lot of shows that summer, and the album did really well. And so fast forward 2 years now, here we are at 2024. This second album's been done and recorded because it was recorded at the same time as the last album. So it's basically been done and just kind of sitting there. And I've been working since that time in 2 years. I have a lot of new material that at some point we're going to record, but I was like, I really want to put out this other album just to kind of complete the whole experience. So that's what this show will be. So on November 8th, we're going to be playing at Hey Sailor. We're going to have physical CDs of the new album. The album In Dreams I Saw Chapter 2 will also be available for digital download. We'll have it on Bandcamp. There will also be two very, very special guests. The show is going to take place at Hey Sailor, which is pound for pound, it's the best music venue around. It's a beautiful space, great food, beautiful stage, great lighting, great sound. So we'll be doing that there, and the thing I'm really excited about is I'm going to be having two of my really good friends, Ronnie, aka Enor, and Halsey, aka or Eric Halsey, aka Halsey. And both these guys are just two of the most talented people I know. Like, they're just so great. They're really good friends. I've been really fortunate to play lots of music with them. We had a band together for a few years called Bone Broth, and that was a band that was all kind of improvised stuff. During that time, those guys started their own projects. Enor has had his electronic group for quite a few years, and that music is very interesting, kind of hard to describe. It's definitely dance oriented, but it is pretty much all improvised, and it has influences of experimental music, hip hop, all kinds of electronic stuff, and it's all live. He's an amazing guitar player, so he incorporates that, and he's a really good singer, so he incorporates that into the music. So it has an ambient, kind of funky, eclectic sound. It is very groove based. So he's going to be opening up the show, and he's going to be going on at 6:30. And then also during that time, my friend Halsey, he started his solo project about 2 or 3 years ago. Halsey, and basically he's an amazing bass player. He's kind of my favorite bass player around. It's highly, highly creative. It's one of the most creative people I've ever met. And so, along with Ronnie. he started this real interesting and super cool solo project that is definitely electronica, but it has influence of like one of the greatest bass players, one of the greatest artists around, Thundercat. It has that kind of new soul funk, hip hop flavor. It has an ambient quality. It also has a experimental edge to it. It's very dance oriented. It's very funky, definitely hip hop based, and kind of psychedelic. So Halsey's also going to be playing. He's going to be, I think, going on after Ronnie, and then we'll be playing after that. And so, yeah, very excited. It's going to be a good dance, great, fantastic dance party. We've been fortunate enough to play a few shows together. I don't think we've ever. Well, we have done one show. We did one show last or this year where we played all together over the summer at Hot Hill Tavern. So, and we've played together in various other kinds of combinations, but not the three of us. Just one time. So, very excited. And the other thing that will be really different for this show is usually when we do our shows for Quantum, I typically don't have set lists. I usually just kind of call things on the fly of what tracks we're going to do, and then also, try to play to the room, which is a thing that I think every musician tries to do. You try to like play to the vibe, play to the sound, play to the vibe of the, whether there's, you know, 5 people there or there's 500 people there. You try to, you have to kind of wing it. And that's usually what I've always really, really relied on with Quantum is we don't have a set list. I usually, in the moment, kind of call the tunes. And sometimes that I think can be a really good thing, and sometimes that can be a tough thing because when you're in the zone, it can be great and it can lead to this really cool flow or even discovering new things because the tunes themselves are very worked out, very rehearsed, but there's lots of areas in the tunes of where there can be areas of lots of improv. And then sometimes without having a plan, you can kind of get into the space of where, wow, it's a little bit of feeling like you're a deer in headlights. But usually things work out, but that can happen. There's a danger to it. And sometimes I think that overall, I like that dangerous part of it, of not really knowing what the heck is going to be coming. The other thing the one thing we will be doing, which will be really, really different, which I've never done for this band, Quantum, is that what we're going to do is, I just decided to try something different. What we're going to do for this show is we're going to just play the album in its entirety and play it in its order. Play the entire album live. And the album itself is not very long. It's just about 48 minutes or so. So it's like less than an hour or a little, or just about there. So what we're going to do is play. We'll we will be playing the album in its entirety in Dreams I Saw Chapter 2. So please come out, check it out if you get a chance. Have some fun. Go out and get some great food and groove and get sweaty on the dance floor. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.